Hey everybody, my name is Jonathan, and this is Dean, and this is James, and today we're talking about factions. And we've been playtesting this game for, I don't know, how long you guys?
About a year and a half.
Yeah.
About a year and a half, so it's been just a little bit. And so we're just, coming off of the campaign and playing through this, and so this is just kind of our thoughts in the wild, I guess.
Debrief.
Of what,
some pointed questions.
Yeah, of what we've experienced.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's kind of what we're going to be doing today, and we're going to answer some questions. So I got the first question for all of us. It says, if you were to rate the Factions co-op solo campaign on 1 to 10, 1 being the worst thing about Factions, 10 being the best, what would you give it? Honest takes, right? What do you think, Dean?
I think, in my personal opinion, it's the best form of the game. I would straight up give it like a 9 or a 10 because it's so much more fun to have that co-op style where everyone's on the same team. You're facing against an AI. You're trying to, not only build the story but just win the game overall. And it's just this growing point of all the characters. You get the character development. You figure out how each character plays better with different heroes. It's so interesting to learn about these characters as you're playing it. That's why it's got to be one of the best things about this game.
Yeah. What do you think, James?
Yeah. I fundamentally agree with basically everything you said on that because I have been an avid co-op board gamer since I was like really little. I'm talking like the old War of the Ring board game from like the 70s or 80s and the Lord of the Rings board game from like 2000 before the movies even came out, and then Shadows over Camelot a bit later. Those are some of my favorites from my past. So the fact that this game has such a strong co-op presence is a huge thing for me. Absolutely love that. But I can't say it's the 10 out of 10. I'd say it's probably like the 9, like you were saying. Yeah. Because to me, the aspect of the game that is still the 10 is how much more streamlined the depth of the game is.
Yeah. I would say, for me, I'm not a co-op kind of guy.
You are an absolute cutthroat killer.
You want to kill everyone.
Here's the deal. Here's the deal. Like, my satisfaction comes in killing, like, real people, and not like actual people, but like people who are playing those characters, right? And so
you want to defeat people.
Yeah, so killing bad
actual
guys,
people
killing bad guys is like AI bad guys is cool, and that's not like a bad thing or anything. But I get like supreme satisfaction from making other people sad, and so which doesn't take away entirely from the campaign. I think that the campaign's story and its characters. And even like their character arcs,
the story and character arcs were
really cool,
very unexpected.
So for me, like the add to the base game is totally worth it. I'm just like I'm the guy who hates Minecraft, right? Because I'm like, where are the people to kill? But in terms of an addition to the game, like I really like it a lot. I give it a 7 just on a personal note, but I can see that its appeal would be pretty broad to a lot of people.
Yeah,
so
I agree.
Did you find the Factions campaign too long, too short, too easy, or too hard? That's a lot of questions. But what do you guys think?
Well, it definitely wasn't too easy. No, far from it. I mean, if you just want to win, like if you just want to get through the campaign, the difficulty is pretty moderate, pretty standard difficulty. But if you want to do really well at the campaign, you have to try super hard.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, I would say real quick too, that I think easy is relative, right? Because you can finish the campaign, right? And you completed it. But if you want to do actually well at the game, that's a different story. That's when it becomes much harder.
Yeah,
I'd say that's the big thing. Is it's the level of care that you have for the characters for the campaign itself. If you just want to blow through, like I want to get the most points possible and just be done out of the way, you can blow through it pretty fast. But if you take the time and you actually focus on what's going on with the characters, with all the heroes, it's going to be a lot longer. And I think you get in where you take out what you're putting in.
Yeah,
that's a big part of it.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, and I think that the 12 sessions length of the campaign is actually pretty good.
Right.
Because it's a bit longer than the average like pickup D&D game that fizzles out.
Yeah.
But it also is shorter than like a really long running thing where you might start to lose some people along the way.
Yeah, I agree. Just so you guys know, I mean, the campaign in terms of like buy-in, like kind of what Dean was saying, you kind of get out what you put in, is if you are like invested in this game, not just time-wise or whatever, but emotionally invested, it's pretty satisfactory. Like,
Yes.
I would say...
It's true.
Yo, so, like, the first campaign that I did, that we all did together, right, that night, I literally had dreams about the characters. And not in, like... no, I'm not joking.
Premonitions.
I had premonitions about the
that
characters.
completely.
And they actually came true. I'm just...
That was
no
really
spoiler
wild.
alerts.
Yeah, that was wild.
But it was crazy, so anyway.
And that night, I remember we were texting, like we had that group chat. We were all messaging that night, like, okay, this went well. These are the things we need to focus on.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what we did wrong. And that's when I realized that this was not just like a, I'll just come by every once in a while and play this game. This was I am dedicated. This is fantastic. This story has me hooked.
Yep.
That's the thing I love about it.
Absolutely right.
I would say real quick, just to give maybe not so it's all the same kind of take. I would say maybe it's I wanted to lose one of the campaigns, I guess. You can do better or worse in some of the campaigns, but like for me, sometimes I like losing. Yeah. Just to see like
get that kind of the arc.
Yeah,
of
where the boundaries are.
And to see what happens. Also, that's the other thing. See what happens when things don't go well.
Exactly.
Because there's so many different results for things in the campaign that we've never seen. Yeah. Right? We played through it once, and we could probably go through it like 3, 4, 5, 6 more times to actually see everything that could possibly happen in it.
Right.
And I think it's not just about being like actually playing on the board map, like on the map. It's also in the decisions that you make when it comes to how you interact with other characters.
Oh,
those small things where we're like, okay, we really messed up here. We know, like it was as soon as we started reading off the answer, we're like, oh.
Yeah.
As soon as we started reading off the results, we're like, yeah, we really messed that up. And I think that's one of the things that's so nice to me is that you could definitely lose in those ways.
Yeah. It's true.
We spent more time trying to solve that one bit of athlete drama than we did actually picking the heroes that we're going to be using on the game board in one of those missions.
Clearest 3 memories from the Factions campaign.
Okay.
All right.
One
each?
Is
that one each?
One each.
Okay,
yeah, we'll do one each.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first?
If you want to start, and then we'll just move this way.
I'll go first. There was that one mission where we had to sneak into the catacombs on the map and try to steal the eggs from that spider boss.
Yeah. Really good.
And we were trying so hard to actually set it up so we could actually steal the eggs without getting killed.
Mm-hmm.
But every single time we went into it, we had our positioning just slightly wrong, and we ended up only being able to take one of like the 6 or 7 that was actually in there that we had to grab.
Right.
And it took us forever to get organized.
Right.
Dude, that was a scary boss.
Yeah.
And like this series hasn't really had bosses in it before, but it does now.
Bro, that was like, you kind of stole mine, so I'm gonna like real quick into yours. Yo, that campaign had me like straight up like Frodo in Shelob's Lair. And it's just like, I'm gonna die now, and this is really, really difficult. So, but, like,
seriously,
it was fun though. We were able to, pull it off.
We had our Samwise in there though, so that was good.
Yeah,
like,
that was true.
We had the one hero that was totally going to be the sacrifice who ended up surviving.
Yep.
And actually doing some damage. Like, I'm gonna walk out of this stronger. It was even better.
That was fun. Yeah, that was fun.
Oh my gosh. Now, for me, I would say one of my favorites was in one of our last campaigns that we did. I think it was actually the last campaign. We had someone in a sniping position.
Oh.
And it was just this constant barrage of enemies flowing in, coming by. We're taking pot shots at everyone. We had to be very careful because if we killed someone with the weapon, then the weapon would disappear, and it was just kind of our suppressing fire throughout the entire mission. And thankfully,
that was beautiful.
It was consistent throughout the entire time of just taking off those little bits of damage for every other every other monster we're facing.
Yeah, that was the final mission.
That
right?
was.
Where we were getting swarmed by all those.
But it was, yeah.
Yeah, that was awesome.
But it was cool though because it was like straight up Annie Oakley on the
top of a
on
rock.
that
top
rock,
of that rock.
right? It's like a rock perch or something that
Yeah.
gives you an extra like +2 aim.
Yeah.
Right, and so just the scenario of that was perfect.
It
And
was
she had like
beautiful.
long range items or firearms, right? And
Yep.
it was just
The perfect
it was
draw, the
great.
perfect character for that position, the perfect placement, everything culminated to that final moment. It felt like it was from a movie. It felt like I was watching these true, these heroes fighting this monster.
Yeah, that's fun. Man, you guys took two ones I actually had in mind. Those are great moments. I really love the beginning and end of the story. So my more I guess my clearer memories are more storyline, I guess.
Yeah.
Because I love choose your own adventure books.
Yeah.
Right. Just in general.
This is a great one.
And this is
Fantastic.
basically that. The campaign is you're making a lot of the decisions for the storyline, and sometimes you know exactly what that means in the moment, or you're not really sure, and you kind of figure out later on what your decisions have kind of cause and effect. And so I love the beginning part where you're getting introduced to your team, you're getting introduced to your athletes, and you're just kind of creating this world in your mind at the beginning of the game, what this looks like, how these characters are interacting, and then even from the get-go, some of these athletes, you're like, I really like that athlete, or I really don't like that athlete.
Spies,
right?
some
And so
athletes.
it's just really, really good. So, I mean, if it's a clear memory, I love... There was the very first, I think, storyline had two girls fighting. You had to basically decide
Oh, we
which
had to solve that
side,
dispute.
Yeah.
what you're going to do
Yeah.
with the dispute. So again, it's not just this. What happens here? It's a little bit of you, right? Because you're playing the coach, right?
Yeah.
In this
Yeah.
game, you as the coach trying to handle some inner conflict within your team and between the athletes. I just remember that specific one. There's a bunch of those little
There's a bunch of
scenarios,
ones, yeah.
I
which
could
is
pick
really fun.
3 favorite memories just from the story itself.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. It says, did you find the enemy AI easy to manage?
Well, I mean, yeah. The entire enemy AI fits on this card, right?
Sure.
Exactly.
It's basically a series of if-then statements, right? That goes down the list. There's a card that you pull to determine kind of what path they follow through this procedure. You go down each one, and what's crazy about it is that despite this being such a small amount of instructions, the AI was able to play as competently as new human players. In a lot of cases.
Yeah.
A lot of turns, they did a devastating job.
I just want to say real quick about managing the AI, that it's not like playing D&D where you as the game master have to go through crazy amount of rules, crazy amount of knowledge for you to figure out what's happening in the game, how to manage certain things. With that piece of paper and that information, I feel like anybody can pick it up and handle the AI, which honestly,
if you know the basic rules and you can read through the list, you absolutely can do
which
that.
is actually kind of fun.
Yeah.
The two to be on the other side
Yeah.
of the game to be kind of like the bad guys. Right?
Yeah.
And so, but it's not that hard.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing is, unlike with being a game master, where you have a book that is that thick just with some of the rules.
And you have to know exactly what all the creatures
Exactly.
are going to do.
Mhm.
Yeah.
With this, it is pretty well laid out, that like you said, the if-then statements. So
Yeah.
there were times where even with how it's laid out, we as players, even though sometimes we weren't controlling the AI, we could see how things were going to go, and we could even tell, okay, based off of this
that's
card, we have to now play a little bit differently.
Yeah.
So it's easier than a lot of other.
Yeah,
plays
it's somewhat
other
predictable.
villains. Yeah.
It's somewhat predictable, but not predictable enough.
Exactly.
And
Until there's
you
those
can't
big
plan
ones.
around
like dummy bots,
Yeah,
right?
You
I
can't
mean,
cheese the bots, right?
No.
You can't do that in this game.
that's really
It's probably the most sophisticated AI in a board game that I've ever played.
Yeah, because
Agreed.
AI in board games hard.
It is.
So,
It's really hard to do.
Did you find the enemy AI challenging?
Yeah, our side
Yeah.
of the table.
That's a different story.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. Obviously, as the campaign goes along, it's going to be more challenging just in general. which is actually kind of funny because I actually felt in some ways our first couple of rounds were a little bit difficult.
We were
trying to figure out things ourselves.
Exactly.
But again, like any sort of game, the more levels, right, the more campaigns that you do, the more difficult it becomes.
Yeah, that definitely scaled in difficulty.
Yeah,
for sure.
And it scaled really well with the level of confidence that we had.
Yes.
The more confidence that you started to develop, it's like, okay, now I'm starting to understand things a lot better. Now I see where these things connect. And then it has those moments of, okay, now let's challenge you on those. Let's challenge your confidence. I think there's times where it felt almost impossible. Like, how am I going to get through this? But it was, at the end of the day, still like, okay, it has a solution, but it's still, you're going to have to think about it. You're going to have to work on it. And it's all these small things you have to piece together in order to get through.
Definitely felt like we were losing sometimes. When we actually did successfully still win.
I even think with the bad guys, right, the enemy AI, the first few campaigns, they're very simple. Right, they're very simple. They usually have like one, maybe two abilities, and you can pretty much easily read. But then again, as it goes on, it becomes more complex because you really have to read what the enemy can do. And again, it's not just whatever 4 or 5 different types of enemies. There's a variance of enemies that you have to encounter and go through. And kind of and bosses as well. So
I think that's kind of the 10 pulls of those bosses, where it's kind of like that checkpoint of, all right, you've worked towards this. How can you perform now? Now that you've gotten through these other earlier points in the campaign, now there's this boss that you have to face, and it challenges everything you've done for the past few rounds.
Right.
Yeah. I enjoy that quite a bit.
And even with the bosses, though, too, not all the campaigns are like, just kill the boss and you win the game.
Some of them do a lot of the bosses were actually optional, especially early on. Right.
Yeah. Which, again, I think is a kind of a fun thing.
Yeah, because if you really have the confidence that you can actually win the scenario and also defeat the boss.
Right.
That's impressive.
Right. And obviously, I think you get more rewards, right?
Yeah.
From completing certain things in different campaigns based off of, how many enemies you defeat or defeating a certain enemy like a boss. Oh. All right.
It's an old meme, bro.
I'm a boomer. Straight up. So... Alright, no. We're moving on from that one. Did the Factions campaign provide a worthwhile story arc that actually affected the game?
Yes.
Yeah, we alluded to this a little bit, but...
More than I thought it would.
Way more than I thought it would. I mean, for starters, I think that it's really important to mention that all of the heroes that you play through the campaign, they're all being controlled by the actual athletes on your team, right? So you as the coach of an athletics team, you're assigning your athletes to play as the different heroes in each match. Mm-hmm. And the extent to which you familiarize yourself with the athletes through the course of the storyline will greatly affect the effectiveness of your team, because those characters, those athletes, will gain different advantages with different heroes. And if you're paying attention to their personalities and you match them with the right heroes, you have a huge advantage by getting some of those abilities that that seriously impact the effectiveness of the hero.
Truly game changers with some of those abilities where
it's
unlocks whole new powers, I guess is the best way to put
exactly.
it.
What was that called when the athletes kind of like mind melded with the hero? That it's immersion.
Immersion, yeah.
That they immerse into a hero, right? And they take on their traits and their form and their abilities, but still like them, I guess.
Yeah. It's like controlling a VR character.
It's like Pacific Rim.
It's like Pacific Rim.
Right?
Yeah,
sort
exactly.
of, but not giant robots, which is a great movie.
Actually, similar to that, there's certain, just like how there's certain characters in Pacific Rim, how they don't meld with other people in those in that movie. There are certain, athletes that will not meld with certain heroes. And it just won't work no matter how much you try.
But,
you can. It's not going to go great.
Yeah. There are consequences.
There are definitely consequences to how you do it.
Immersing into the wrong hero.
Yeah.
Right.
And all of that is just from the interactions with the athletes.
Yeah.
Like, we haven't even talked about the effects of any of the other storyline choices,
Some of the
right?
simple choices you can make that can change the entire construct of
Yeah,
the
like
team you have.
How you're tracking the morale for the team through the course of the whole
Right.
campaign, and that modifies the number of boosts that you start with on all your heroes.
I think one of the most fun things for me was when we'd read through it and say, draw a small symbol of this on this section of the athlete sheet, of the campaign sheet.
Right? Yeah,
And
what does that mean?
What does that
No
mean?
idea what it means.
And when it finally comes to that culmination of, if you have this is what it means, all these dots start connecting at the very end. I think that's one of my favorite parts of the campaign.
It came together super well.
All those small choices that had an effect.
Yeah, super rewarding. I mean, even just in the story, I mean, if it was like a movie poster, right, it'd be like, it has comedy, it has tragedy, it has romance, it has drama. It really does.
It really does. Like, it literally has all those things. And mystery, dude.
And it has a mystery, so it's like...
It kind of feels like the Princess Bride, it's got, the romance, the action, magic, sword. Yes, it has all of those.
Yeah.
And it's so rewarding.
I really appreciated the extra work that went into making it more than flavor text. Because it takes a lot of work to build a story, especially for a board game, that goes down a decision tree that doesn't feel like it's just flavor text.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
It's not a story for the sake of having a story, for the sake of making things kind of more fleshed out.
Right.
But the fact that it actually affects the game and the choices you make along the way will alter what happens later. Yeah. That's really, really cool. That's a lot of extra work.
And I think we've already kind of stated a little bit, but again, you have these team of athletes, and if you've ever been a coach, right, or in charge of a group, you might not say who your favorites are, right, but you definitely have your favorites. And so I think in this game, you definitely have your favorites, and you definitely have your like problem people, or the ones you just don't like. So like for me, I loved O'Reilly, like from the very beginning. That was my boy. I love that guy. He's super smart. I feel like I understood him, even though he's just like this, little pitcher. I understood him. And so because I liked him so much, anything that he went through in the game, I felt that.
Yeah.
So, then those other athletes
I had the opposite.
It was good.
I had the opposite with Pavov. I, for some reason, never really... I was always like, this little weasel, I want... I always thought that there was something he was doing wrong, or that there's something he could fix. And for some reason, the culmination of his character even turned me into saying, all right, I kind of like the guy. I'm kind of starting to love him because of what happens through his character development. So, and it was only through some of the choices we made that changed everything.
James, do you have a favorite athlete?
I always loved Jenny because of how she had that character struggle of trying to prove herself, even though she was like the team owner's pick, because she was the team owner's daughter, basically, right? So she's sort of dealing with this sentiment among the rest of the athletes that she's kind of just a nepotism pick.
She's the princess.
But in reality, she's really effective, but she has to do an extra mile to prove that.
Yeah, that's cool. This one is, was there enough character progression to keep your interest?
Well, there we go. Yeah.
Simply put, definitely. It wasn't just like, there's enough to keep me interested. I was, at the end of the campaigns, I was like, okay, where can this lead?
Yeah.
Every single time we did a campaign, it was, okay, where's this next point going to lead to?
Right.
What is this related to? There was that mystery throughout the entire campaign that I was thinking, there is an answer and I'm going to try and find it. It blew me out of the water, but I never figured it out.
And spoiler free, but I was shocked that some of the athletes didn't actually stay with us the entire campaign.
Yeah, you can interpret that however you want.
Yeah.
And I think what's great about following character and character arcs and what's happening and seeing their motivations and stuff is that you realize, again, just kind of in real life, your decisions as a coach affected their character arc, though, as well. And so it's pretty high stakes on some of them. I would not say every single Choose Your Own Adventure, fork in the road had the same amount of stakes.
Well, of course not.
At least at the time, you don't think
it wouldn't be satisfying if every single thing was like, boom, dramatic impact.
Life or death. No, it's...
it's like, save this person or execute them in front of your whole team. It's not bad.
I think there's even
the
small ones
variance
of,
was really good.
there's small ones of you can make the right choice and you get another insight for that character.
Yeah,
Because you just made
absolutely.
them happier.
Exactly.
Or you learn some small detail about their past or their passions, the things they want out of this.
Yeah.
Those small things you could learn about your athletes.
Was
that
help
you learn
as
a
you
real
coach, right? Which
Yeah.
helps you coach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
anyway.
absolutely right.
Yeah. So the character arcs, I think, there's one for every athlete.
Yeah.
Though too. Sometimes I feel like there's just maybe one or two that kind of rises above, but I feel like everyone has their own sort of like personality and story to follow.
Certainly.
So
And some of them you can even predict, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Right? If you really are aware of what's going on, like how you shipped so hard for that one couple, and then they became a thing.
no spoilers.
Fact, you were right.
That one couple. So I was so happy though. So
You called it, man.
Can't matchmake in real life.
You called
so,
it.
Gotta matchmake in factions campaign.
Yeah, even the fact that your choices could either make or break that.
Yeah.
Dude, that's rough, bro.
I know. The fact that you were
It's a lot of responsibility.
That's a lot of responsibility, dude.
That's the whole thing of being a coach of such an amazing team of athletes, like in this campaign. Every choice, you don't know whether it's going to be, this is a huge make or break moment, or you just learn a little bit more about the person.
Yeah.
And that's why everything needs to be taken to that, that seriousness of, okay, this could be part
Yeah.
of a huge section of the team.
And again, it's really, the story is not just you and your athletes.
Yeah.
There's
something
a world
broad.
going on.
There's world building that's going on,
Yeah.
as well. So it's not just an isolated sort of story line. It's broad.
Mhm.
So which is really really good. Hey, thanks for watching. If you'd like to, and you should like this video.
And be sure to subscribe as well.
And share this video with your friends so they can get into this game too.
And hit that bell notification so you get more updates.
Yeah. Thanks for watching.